Banter. We are live with the second episode. We have some huge topics tonight and also some amazing guests. Tonight, we're going to be talking about breaking news, which just completely got filtered off my timeline until like maybe within the hour. Anonymous activist group is inscribing classified U.S. war logs onto Bitcoin. We also have the man himself with Or.io here to talk about their newest update with fully on-chain IDEs on Bitcoin. We have Jake here with his own show, and we were going to be talking about his sorry, I lost my place. We're going to be talking about him sourcing deal partners for Bitcoin Frontier Fund. Sorry for butchering your introduction, Jake. And yeah, so let's get straight into it. How are you guys doing today?
Well, hold on, Chris. What about me? Boy, he just introduced them to it. I'm not here. Wait, see, guys, this is what happened last episode, right? I'm part of the show, and I had nothing to do with the new name. I got outvoted for the name Bitcoin Ordinals Banter. Like I said, I didn't like it. Chris likes it, and Charlie liked it, and I got outvoted. And now Chris is just not introducing me at all. Yo, what?
And we have
I'm here too, Chris.
Ken 100. What's the 100?
Yes. I'm here too, Chris.
What's the 100?
Thank you.
For? Is it because you're all in on Bitcoin now? Do I need to play the clip from last week?
Don't. The audio is not gonna go through, so it's not gonna help you. So no, don't play that clip, please.
Leo would love that. So before we formally introduce, last week was our first episode, and I got Ken on video saying that ETH is dead and that he's like all in on Bitcoin after one video.
Very nice.
So how are you guys doing today, Leo, Jake?
Good. Another great day to be in the ordinal space. This was a little bit more of maybe a serious day with the WikiLeaks stuff getting inscribed. It's not your average day in the ordinal space, but yeah, trying to keep up with everything that's going on.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm loving this already. I mean, we got some very professional vibes going on. You know how to run an intro for sure. Good energy. You tried your best doing the Trevor intro. I give it a 6 out of 10. We'll get there. We'll get there. But yeah, got to kick with you guys.
6 out of 10, man. It sounds like a sourcing partner language. Like give it my best shot, but I still only get a 6 out of 10. Well, when you're sourcing partners,
I got some feedback.
When you're sourcing partners, Jake, like, do you give them that strict evaluations as well?
I mean, I try to. It's hard to make rapport quickly when you're like meeting a founder. Like you meet them for the first time for a 30-minute call. You don't want to be a dick too fast on like shooting down their idea. So, but if they're building the wrong thing, or if I have feedback that can help them, like it's only going to make them build better and spend less time doing the wrong direction. So, yeah, you try and thread that line of giving the best feedback you can, while also knowing your limits. Like if I don't know a space, I probably shouldn't be giving too much feedback. Like I gotta have more questions at that point than suggestions or answers. So it really depends on the call. But yeah, I always try to be as honest and transparent as possible.
Heck yeah, man, for sure. We got a comment already. We got Crypto Recruiter and the speaking of sourcing partners in the name saying Epic Glasses, Ken. Ken, you're muted, but you are being recognized.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Just now I was gonna comment. So Jake, how long before you could just be a dick to these partners? You say you don't want to be a dick right away. Like, give me a time frame. You could just let it
Honestly,
let it fly.
It's less a function of time and more reading the room. Like if I think they're a big boy or big girl and they can handle it, then yeah, we'll just jump straight into like, founders that are experienced, they like critical feedback. Like they've been through it and they know that if you're going after the wrong thing, that's a horrible idea. So it just depends on like kind of like reading the room. You don't want to squander a relationship and like have someone start to badmouth you. So it just depends. It's kind of a vibe check. Like for you, I'm not sure if you can handle it, so I might have to go a little nicer on you.
Dang.
For example. So it just depends.
You talking about Ken can't handle it?
Me, I can't handle it.
Yo, we got Abel said, hey, in the chat. So do we need to like run like if I almost said role play. This sounds kind of weird, but like if you and Leo like met at a meetup and he's like, hey man, like, this is what I can tell you about Ord, like, do we need to like play that out like as if like, you're being
I mean,
pitched?
it would be unique for Leo because I know his product decently well, and they're also one of the leaders when it comes to like they have massive distribution already when it comes to being like one of the top explorers. So it would depend on what he's building and how fast he could execute and his go to market using his current website. But yeah, it would be he would be one of the upper echelon teams where I'm like,
Okay.
I know the product, I know the founder decently well because I could see his show. So we'd already be at like step 3 or 4 as far as feedback or like uh, technical questions versus like, hey, what's up, man? Good to meet. What are you building? Like that's kind of like the generic starter. It wouldn't be that with Leo.
All right, let's go to phase 2. Let's say you didn't know Ord, and I'm gonna scratch my questions because this is what you do, Jake. What would you ask him? And Leo can give you a legit answer.
Okay, so
that can be said, like maybe not.
So just for context, we're gonna role play that I don't understand what Leo is doing, and I'm gonna ask him on a call like to pitch me.
Yeah. Bitcoin Banter,
okay.
man.
This is interesting.
Are you down for that, Leo?
Yeah, I mean, I can give a super short pitch. I mean, it's funny because it's like we're both completely on the same page on probably everything here. But yeah, at a high level, Bitcoin's primarily been used for currency for the last 14 years. And there's now this second use case of people taking files and storing them on Bitcoin. People have paid $57 million over the past 9 months doing this. Half the transactions on Bitcoin in September were people inscribing these files. And we are an explorer that allows you to view these files. You can think of us like Google Images for Bitcoin. That's like the elevator, really short version.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I get that. So if you're doing this Google Images for Ordinals, and you've built up to this point, like what are you guys building next? Or like I'm assuming you're fundraising. That's why you're pitching me. Or do you need something else? Like how can I be of service here? This would be the question I would ask. Is like, do you want fundraising? Do you want resources? Do you want connections? Like how can it be of high leverage right here?
Yeah, so I always love feedback, at any point in time, fundraising or not, right? You're a cool guy, Jake. I would love your feedback. So our approach
You don't know Jake right now.
Yeah, we're gonna be we're gonna be doubling down on the rare and exotic sats, right? This is an area that we helped pioneer in the space, and it's probably been our largest contribution to the space. And we're going to be releasing more features in that area going forward. I think there's a really strong traction and a cult following around that asset class, and we're going to help nurture that.
That was
interesting.
You can keep going. I was just gonna say that was a lot of fun. This was not.
I want to.
Yeah,
I want to do one more follow up because this is where the conversation would get interesting, because the thing he's built so far, which is an explorer for art and like being able to filter things, is not what he's building next. So that would be the next question: is like, how does this fit into the current infrastructure that you've built with Ord.io, or are you doing a separate platform? Like, how do these go hand in hand?
Yeah, so we released Sattributes earlier this year, and the idea behind Sattributes was there's all of these unique sats on Bitcoin now. Through the ordinal theory lens, you can make Bitcoin non-fungible. These sats are uniquely identifiable and trackable. And we introduced this idea of Sattributes to label and index the kind of interesting sats. Almost all of the 2.1 quadrillion sats, they're very boring. People aren't very interested in them. But wouldn't you like to know if you own an inscription that's inscribed on a sat that Satoshi mined or Satoshi held, right? That's an interesting data point. So earlier this year, we were the first ones to index these different categories of sats that inscriptions are on. So for the first time when we released this feature in May, people could see, okay, I own this inscription, or somebody inscribed this file on top of a Satoshi that was maybe part of the Bitcoin pizza transaction, or was a Satoshi that was held by Hal Finney, or it's this beautiful palindrome number. And that initial kind of spark in the ecosystem ended up, it made us pretty popular as an explorer because there was no other place to go to view that. And then, since then we've helped many others adopt this standard, and there's a pretty legit, asset class here with like half the miners on Bitcoin are extracting their uncommon sats. You've got I know multiple people who are sifting and rare sat hunting over $100 million worth of Bitcoin every day. And there's a pretty interesting wave going on here. And yeah, I would say to the listeners, check back sometime next week to see maybe what we're envisioning our next contribution to this space will be.
I have to give a plug here because, like, obviously we are with Ninja Alerts, and our entire Ordinal collection is going to be inscribed on pizza sats. That was one of the really cool things that like stood out to me when like thinking about sats and like where they came from and everything like that, or like the idea behind it. Obviously, it fits like our ninja theme, but it's just really cool that we were able to like track those down and be able to like inscribe our collection on like specifically the pizza sets that came from the Bitcoin transaction over the initial like large Bitcoin pizza purchase. So that's just a fun little plug for our upcoming Ninja Alerts mints.
Love it. Yeah, you guys, the pizza sats to me are just like the most fun of all these categories. There's like all these hardcore collectors who are just super serious about some of these attribute categories and they're getting all mathy. But the pizza transaction is like this iconic moment in Bitcoin, right? Everybody knows it. It's this kind of I feel like they're kind of like meme coin for Bitcoin or something like this. So it's really cool that you guys are going to integrate that like into the actual collection, right? I'm a pizza sat fan. There's pizza sat haters out there too, but I am like definitely think Bitcoin's about having fun, not just business all the time. And the pizza sats, like, absolutely, I was super happy to see that.
Wait, you said pizza sat haters? Tell me more about those guys. Why do they hate pizza sats?
Well, there's lots of haters on in the crypto space. If you haven't noticed, people don't tend to hold back on sharing their opinions on crypto Twitter or NFT Twitter. And yeah, I mean, basically, people like to FUD things. They'll say like there's a lot of pizza sats, so they're not rare. To me, this is like kind of a silly point. Like, I think, people aren't buying the pizza sat because like they want a $500 pizza sat. People like pizza sats because it's a pizza sat. It's like this really interesting, like, as a collector, sometimes it's not about the money or about, numbers go up. Sometimes it's just about, hey, like, I get to tell my friend and flex in my collection on Ord.io that I own a pizza sat. Like, that is what's interesting about pizza sats to me. So the whole like the trader type of people, and there's people who would say like, oh, like there's a bunch of these attribute categories that we've indexed on Ord.io where there's a lot of them. And my point back would be like, it's like, so what, right? Like, how badass is it that you can inscribe a file onto a sat from the Bitcoin pizza transaction? That's the cool part about it to me.
That is cool, man. Would you compare it? And I know you've been asked this a million times, and I've joined obviously a lot of the spaces that you guys host. I know it has its advantages over this system, but like, would you compare it to kind of being like a coin collector or like a collector of like certain like
Yeah,
assets?
I collected coins as a kid. I haven't, been collecting coins for a while, but I would go to the flea market and there was this stand that had a guy and just a ton of these different old coins, coins from different countries, all different, like every coin you can imagine, right? Like different properties, different metals, and each coin has like a story. Like, you would like take a coin and you'd ask the guy, like, tell me about this one. And he could tell you like all of these details and all of these stories about it. So yeah, there's something interesting about how, money is obviously, fungible, but when you have it in coin form or gold form, there's actually value to a narrative behind the actual like physical object itself. Even though, yes, like you can melt it down and have gold in your gold coin, the coin's worth more than just the gold that creates it because it's 200 years old, or because it was owned by this interesting person, or it has this interesting kind of story behind it and provenance. So yeah, it's literally just digital coin collecting. Like, this is not like, you don't have to stretch your imagination too far to realize like we're just digital coin collectors.
I saw Jake almost jump out of his seat when you said that like your Satoshi is worth more than like his pile of Bitcoin. Like, I think you got him sparked a little bit and heated. We were talking about JPEGs before the show, and I don't know, what's your opinion on JPEGs, Jake?
Man, you want to go there? I mean, I'm bullish on NFTs long term. I'm not bullish on the current culture. So I'll caveat. I think speculation is very valuable, for sure. But 90% of the current value of NFTs is just that. And so I think that I was bullish for a little while. Now I'm like, we'll wait and see. So I'm kind of in the middle. I don't buy them much anymore. And I think long term, they're going to be more valuable with some kind of utility. You know, the narratives of like movie tickets and theaters. And once you have that provenance, you can kind of do funky things with them. I'm more bullish on that. I'm not currently very bullish on art on chain, which I know is like kind of heresy to some people. But yeah, I'm not super bought into it outside of the speculative piece that drives it up.
Are you bullish on activist group inscribing classified U.S. war logs into Bitcoin?
100%. That's like the perfect use, bro. WikiLeaks and Ordinals were like meant to be together for sure.
DGens are like, man, how do I profit off of this? Like, how do I sell these war logs?
A 10K Pentagon collection. That would be
What? So like, I obviously have the article pulled up and like I breezed it myself. Like, have you guys really been looking into this today? Do you have any insights that maybe the article just like doesn't like show firsthand?
I know nothing about it besides the headline, so you guys will educate me live in real time.
Leo?
Yeah, so like I did not do like a deep dive on this to fully understand like how like what level of illegal materials this is. I believe it's just content that was already out there. It's not like this is Snowden dropping documents for the first time or something like this. So I think it's just taking content that was on WikiLeaks and publishing it on Bitcoin because I mean, I think there's a good argument that Bitcoin is just a far superior version of WikiLeaks. So yeah, I think WikiLeaks already released. It's not like it's new news. This is a kind of old story, old content from a while back. But yeah, it's interesting. Somebody's reached out to Bitcoin Magazine and claiming that they were the ones who did this, and Bitcoin Magazine covered it. And we'll see if this is something more people choose to do. But obviously, a pretty sensitive topic, right? Like this is not the average, rare Pepe inscription or crypto dick butt, right? Like this is like serious stuff, like that affects people's lives and stuff. So.
Yeah, it solidified it, like, yeah, sure. It was already documented. Like you see the Guardian covered it, but now it's permanent and now you can't filter it. And that's one of the things since like the beginning of Ordinals that I've kind of viewed it as is like the immutability of it, of like the freedom of speech and the freedom of like just being able to like document this type of stuff. Like you in history, the amount of times you've heard the phrase like burning of books or changing of history or anything like that, like they've changed history. But with this, what can you do? It's inscribed on Bitcoin now. It's there. Like I'm very interested to see how this plays out. Like there's been a lot of times in the past where I feel like people have done like somewhat innocent like things that have like been like severely persecuted, and I hope that this isn't like one of those things. I don't know. What do you guys think that like
it is one of those things,
Chris? As I say, do you guys think that the person who did this could face some type of persecution for this?
Yeah.
The inscriber?
Yes.
Yes. It's treason.
Maybe.
I mean, it is directly. It's an illegal act, I believe. So I think if they were to be doxxed or exposed, that would probably be a pretty significant issue for them. I assume they're not based in the U.S., but we have literally no information about them.
Ken, I told you not to inscribe this, man.
Chris, come on, don't dox me like
that, bro. 100%, he inscribed that.
It was I. You got me. It was I.
I'm curious though, Leo. You're more technical. Like, is it pretty easy with the current tech of like a VPN and whatever to inscribe something to Ordinals and leave no trace of it if you wanted to? Like, is it for the average Joe? Is it decently easy at this point?
So leave no trace is a really high bar, actually. But somebody who knows what they're doing, it would be fairly trivial. I think the reality is most people don't actually know what they're doing, and a lot of amateurs do kind of this kind of thing, and they probably could be found. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm this one's interesting to me because I remember when WikiLeaks came out, and mo most people were finding it through, like, snippets were coming out. You could find articles, but the bulk of it was on BitTorrent, and so you had to go to, like, the Pirate Bay or some other site to, like, get the whole download, and they kept censoring the front end of those websites, so it'd be harder and harder to find a proper BitTorrent site that had a good, like, seed you can get from. So I find this interesting. And there's one site, one BTC.news, that's trying to do exactly this, where it's like you would scribe anything you think is newsworthy onto the chain, and they just give you a running list of everything inscribed in kind of ascending order. Um, so I do find that cool, where it's like if you could solve for the anonymity part decently well, and Bitcoin is this time chain of history, then like right now with the war stuff going on, you could have like people boots on the ground upload stuff, and it filters past the kind of like media bias and Twitter or whatever. Um, the
You
tricky
sure
part here
about
is
that?
cost. The tricky part here is cost, though, because it's so expensive that only the thing that is deemed valuable enough is worth incurring the cost, especially if it's an image and not just text based. So that's the tricky part. But what do you mean by am I sure about that?
Do you believe there should be secrets, like things we shouldn't, as civilians, we shouldn't know about? Or do you think everything should be open to everybody at every time?
No, there should be secrets, but I also like the tension of secrets and them trying to safeguard their stuff, and people trying to do what they think is illegal but morally right. I like that tension. So I think that should exist. I'm not like government should be fully transparent. That's the government that can hide better with that stuff is just going to win because they have an advantage because they can read your books and then move around whatever you're doing. So I think it's both. I think you need to have one side fighting for secrecy and doing what they think is best for their nation state, and then others being like, hey, this is messed up that people should know, and they're constantly at war. In
Jake,
fact,
what
a
have you
moral war.
done recently that was illegal but morally right? Please don't answer that. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm gonna plead the fifth.
This whole thought process though with this like breaking news, like we were like waiting for this to happen. I've seen like much smaller scale things that have kind of made me like uncomfortable. Like I saw somebody inscribing like very like large or not, like large IP to Bitcoin. And I always wondered like if it came down to like a big sell on that, like let's say you inscribe Pikachu or something and like, later sell that Pikachu for a lot of money, like, it's there. It's like you can't like take it down. Like it's an ordinal now, and it's the first ordinal that's a Pikachu or hypothetically or whatever. So like I've always thought like, is that going to lead back to lawsuits, even if like people initially were like just didn't really think about it, or like maybe it was just like in the back of their head or whatever. But I guess maybe if you just inscribed it and like don't sell it, like that'd be a solution. And I'm not trying to make everybody lawyers up here, but the whole like repercussions has been in the back of my head, for like inscribing because of the permanence of it.
Same. Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation because I think everybody has kind of been waiting, for something to happen. It's just kind of inevitable, I think, in most people's minds that people will at some point inscribe some sort of heinous content. People will inscribe, top secret things like, whistleblower leaks, this kind of thing. And it's a really tricky situation having an immutable database at the end of the day. Like, as soon as the internet got peer-to-peer networks like this stuff was always sort of possible. Like you're never going to plug every hole. So the way this is essentially handled is the government goes after the clients for viewing the peer-to-peer network. So, you can basically make it quite difficult to actually access the to the content from like the average person's perspective. And that's probably, the only real solution here, right? Is, if you have IP that's illegal, you DMCA all the exchanges, and then 99% of people are on the same 10 NFT exchanges, NFT marketplaces, and it's as if that sort of disappeared. But yeah, they can't, take it off a Bitcoin node, right? It's a really interesting question. And there's so many great properties of that. But there will come a time where, things that, maybe, I don't know, like the arguments in the early days of Bitcoin were terrorist organizations, all these bad things, right? And these are much more serious questions that I don't have the answers for. Unfortunately, no technology is a silver bullet. You get the good with the bad, and you have to hope and aim for, making the good really outweigh the bad, because unfortunately, every technology does have some cons associated with it. So it's I don't we're not lawyers up here, and this is like, honestly, it's mostly like an ethical conversation probably.
Sure.
But yeah, legally I think they go after the clients, and that's if the government decides to do, like, if the United States federal government decides to do that, that's a very interesting moment in the history of Bitcoin.
Well, let's focus on the goods real quick. I want to go back to Ord.io. You guys had a very recent update that looks really cool for developers, and I just want to talk about the space as a whole. Like, Leo, what makes you want to continue to build on it? And Jake, the things that you hear when sourcing, like what makes these people want to risk so much time, effort, and money, to be in the Bitcoin space. Before we get into that, let's directly take a look at Ord.io's recent update of a fully on-chain IDE on Bitcoin. Can you tell us about that while I'm pulling it up, Leo?
Yeah. So interestingly, this wasn't something that we did. This individual who goes by Bop has been inscribing some really interesting JavaScript packages, and their most recent inscription is this tool. So like, we're like the browser to view these inscriptions, right? So people are not just uploading images, they're inscribing these interactive web pages basically. So he or she inscribed this tool that allows you to write code, view how that code will be rendered in the right side of things, and then basically just click a button and export that code, and then you can inscribe it. And anybody who's creating p5.js, this is the package that everyone uses to create these like really crazy looking inscriptions at very small file sizes. This is a pretty invaluable tool that is hosted on Bitcoin. Like it's kind of like Bitcoin really is becoming an internet. Like, the actual website that Bob created is hosted on Bitcoin, and they're just accessing it through the Ord.io like web browser is the way to think about it. So like, you can see I changed the color to blue, I ran it, you can see it, the background turns to blue, and then build, and then you would just copy that, and like it would cost you like very little money to inscribe a p5.js file, because the on-chain monkey team did all the hard work of actually inscribing the more expensive like JavaScript packages that you're just leveraging existing on-chain code to build your inscription in a very efficient manner. So we're seeing increasingly a lot more inscriptions using these recursive techniques to build. And this is just instead of Bop going and creating their own website and tweeting about it, they just put the tool on chain, and anybody can go to any Ordinals browser and use that tool. It's a pretty unique way of Bop gets it, is I guess how I would summarize it. Like, it's pretty badass.
I could like make a coffee shop website, or it's a website for my coffee shop, like through Ord.io directly.
As long as you're only doing on-chain things. If the state is on Bitcoin, you can use it. If you like, pretty much all the Ordinals explorers marketplaces would block if you tried to have somebody make a purchase, for example, through the website, because there's a ton of reasons why, but pretty much the state is only Bitcoin is just like the general rule that we follow. That's for security reasons, as well as I think there's this ethos of just staying on chain here. So I think it would be cool to like do an announcement or like an advertisement, or a kind of informational, educational landing page, but not maybe your actual website. I think maybe there's other explorers who would maybe cater to that use case more, a mix of on-chain and off-chain.
So it's more for landing pages are more suitable for inscription?
Yeah, I mean, people have inscribed, their profile. Like, there was like a software developer who just wrote a little short resume and put their profile picture and made this beautiful background and inscribed it. And it's instead of going to LeonidasNFT.com or whatever this person's name was, or going to JacobBrown.com, their website, their personal site is on Bitcoin, right? It's kind of a just neat way to instead of going to GoDaddy and buying a domain and, paying a hosting service to host your website, you just inscribe it to Bitcoin, right?
So it's cheaper for now. It's cheaper in the long run.
Absolutely. You're paying a one-time fee for literally infinite hosting of your website. I think Bitcoin block space is still incredibly undervalued. So the arbitrage there is awesome. Like,
dude, that needs to be the headline right there. One-time fee for infinite hosting space. That's a big deal. That's something that like Web 2 people would be like, yo, that's some dope shit. Like I want to figure that out.
Yes, 100%. It's pretty awesome that like, you don't have to ever worry about anything. It's good forever, right? Nobody else can really tell you that.
So Jake, if you're sourcing right now, you're at, that conference, would you be slipping them some money? Like, I want in on this or?
Well, for this example, they're doing the front end piece, but the actual like heavy lifting is someone else's like P5JS stack, right, Leonidas?
Well, so this is just a single inscription, right, that somebody else built. So it's on chain. It's really a combination of like multiple different developers inscribed these different files and created these building blocks that then Bob comes along and builds something cool on top of. And someone might even come along and take what Bob created and build something on top of that. It's really interesting how like the internet is just this giant set of building blocks. And we have like very basic building blocks right now for Bitcoin inscribers to work with.
Got it. Yeah, so I like the idea. It's early, obviously, which is all things in Ordinals are. So we're still building the primitives, but the idea of looking at an entire stack of recursive pieces, for example, like you have the React library, the P5JS library, and having someone create like the Macromedia Dreamweaver, like the what you see is what you get editor, that does it pulls in all these things that are on the chain, and you can then manipulate them and make it as cheap as possible. So you get to preview what your site looks like and then inscribe it as a recursive inscription. That'd be a dope business. And then you take a cut of like the inscription fee, for example,
right.
And you just progressively get a bigger and bigger library of tools. And you get, again, that one-time fee, like inscribe once, host forever. Once you solve for the DNS system, like Squarespace is in trouble, Webflow is in trouble. Like they're competing on features and how advanced you get. But it's hard to compete with a inscribe once and have it up forever thing. And if you did solve for the DNS names, like whether you have like a Chrome extension that resolves for like Leonidas.btc points to whatever he wants you to point at, and it goes to the Bitcoin blockchain, that's a really nice 1-2 punch.
Not to mention,
I love this.
Sorry, Jake.
No, I love it as a primitive. That's all. It's a really cool idea.
Like if somebody buys your landing page or your site, like you just transfer Satoshi, right?
Yeah.
Like it seems pretty minimal, to like actually like transfer. Like you're not having to go through a third party service that I know. I mean, I guess if you did it like directly over Ord, but like ultimately like you're transferring a Satoshi. Is that correct?
Chris, you know the real move? The real move is you transfer your Satoshi to Satoshi. Then nobody can ever touch it again. And then it's pretty much burned. I've done that with a lot of my inscriptions.
Wait, what?
I know. That's why I'm laughing. They both caught it. It's like, ooh, and both of us are like, what are you talking about,
I just imagine like two like bubbles forming one bubble. I don't get it. Why can you explain like I'm fine?
He's saying it's like when you send your tokens or your graffiti or your NFT graffiti to a dead wallet, and it's just there as like it can be displayed forever at that wallet address. So I think he's saying send your sat to the known Satoshi wallet. So now your website is forever untouchable unless Satoshi wakes up and then we're all screwed. It's forever untouchable and lives with Satoshi is what he's saying.
Dang, yeah. I don't know, man. I saw Satoshi on Twitter last week. He might wake up and be like, man, what is all this stuff? Well, why do I have so many?
That's a good idea.
Right?
I'm about to create like the dopest Bitcoin Satoshi's vision website through this like recursive thing, and then send that to Satoshi's real address.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, the whole thing like recursive and ordinals, like and it's really mind blowing. It's crazy because I feel like even like very tech savvy people that are like smarter than me when it comes to tech, that are not involved in like the ordinal space, like just don't know or they don't care, one of the two. And I don't know why, because like, you know, like you clearly see the benefits to it, but it's just that it's completely overlooked. And yeah, I just people just don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Leo? Sorry to cut in, but Leo, where's Parent Child at right now? Is it ready and live yet?
So parent-child is live. The issue with it is to do parent-child in any sort of reasonable manner, it would need to be a cursed inscription. And you know, a lot of people don't necessarily want their inscriptions to be cursed. They want them to be recognized as positive inscription numbers. So yeah, there's people doing parent-child, and we're actually releasing just some basic exploring around that pretty shortly. But you know, people aren't really going to do it until the blessing of multiple inscriptions being created in a single transaction happens, because it's just fundamentally it's just not as desirable, I guess, to have maybe the cursed, I guess.
Got it. The reason I asked is because if you had a head sat, a website, for example, and you had a bunch of sub pages that were child, and you wanted to sell that domain, that website, could you just sell the parent and the owner would get the entire website with all the sub pages?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be quite exactly like that. Maybe reinscription would be a better example there, where they're all associated to one SAT. So they're all of the files are on a single SAT. But because parent-child still allows you to have multiple SATs for the inscriptions, you would have to actually transfer all of the individual inscriptions to the person. But there are ways you could say, hey, the parent has the ability to edit these other files, you know, in certain ways, that you could do something like that. So it could be, there are like weird in between kind of things. I don't think you would necessarily want to do a parent-child for like transferring everything though.
Got it. And Chris, Ken, did you understand that? I just want to check in with you guys real quick because you didn't get the Satoshi thing either.
I think he's
Yeah,
trying to
I
call
just
us. I think he's trying to call us middle curve, Ken.
He is.
Middle curve. That's giving yourself too much credit. No, I'm kidding.
Oh shit!
Kidding.
Dude, that's really tough, man. It was good having you on the
Damn.
show today, Jake.
What he thought this was.
This isn't an ordinal. This is immutable. I can remove you whenever I want.
You can't see me, but can you still hear me? This is the pot calling the kettle black, bro. I'm firmly left curve too, so it's all good.
I do have a question though. Like you did an example about the person that puts their resume on chain or inscribe their resume. What about editing the resume if they get a new job or something? Is that possible in this going this route?
The answer here is probably what would make the most sense is you would take the inscription that you already have, you would recursively pull it into a new inscription, and then you would just alter like a very little bit of it, right? A little bit of the text. So you wouldn't have to like pay to reinscribe the entire thing again. It's already on chain, but you could have a new inscription that is the modified version. And then if there was some sort of like domain pointing system, I think like Jake was saying, you could just point to the new inscription. That's an option. There's other harder ways you could do it, but that is like probably the best way. And I've actually seen tons of people do this. Like they'll make something and they don't like it, and they'll just pull the old inscription in, make a little edit on it, and then they have their new version.
And with all this, do you think Amazon would allow this to happen?
Like Amazon Web Services, or like
yes,
Amazon the company? Yeah,
Web services. Yes,
it's interesting. Like AWS is, you know, like the primary place where people store content in Web 2. And yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Bitcoin is like the antithesis of AWS. Like AWS is a centralized database that essentially one company, one person controls at the end of the day. And you have to pay a fee, you know, every month to host your content there. And this is the exact opposite. Like it's completely decentralized. You pay a one-time fee, it's there forever. So look, this is probably only going to make sense for like a very select, very important set of documents. But for like very important pieces of culture, very important, you know, writings, very important, you know, books, I think it makes a lot of sense to inscribe to Bitcoin. I don't see AWS like going out of business anytime soon. I think it still makes sense to, you know, store 99.999% of files on AWS. But yeah, the most important stuff should be on Bitcoin. And, you know, hopefully, I don't think that affects AWS's business a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, I would say similar arguments for like really just crypto in general. Like I would say, especially for people that are pro Bitcoin, like most things that you want, like they're forever, and like the mutability and that trust, that security, that decentralization, you're gonna go for Bitcoin. But like I know there are games building on Bitcoin. There are a lot of other cool stuff, but like it still makes sense to either to have L2s or even to have other chains. Now I don't know, Leo and Jake might disagree with me on the other chains, but in my head, it makes sense to have like a bunch of cheap transactions, a bunch of just different ways to like do things outside of like everything I just named. Somebody,
Yep.
we had Casey Spears. Was that his? No.
Charlie.
Charlie Spears last week. He was suggesting use Bitcoin to host other chains. You remember that, Ken?
Yeah, it's
Yes,
there
as an
is this-
IPFS.
Yeah.
I think Bitcoin is like the center of orbit in the crypto ecosystem. Like also Ethereum is like, this other really large crypto economic network. And then all of these, there's just a lot of like random L1 chains that I think probably don't make sense in a world of L2s. I think you'll actually see, like my prediction would be, Solana will be either an L2 on Ethereum or Bitcoin 5 years from now. And I think that's, just the kind of direction things seem to be heading in. So yeah, I think L2s on Bitcoin are like super exciting, right? Like who wouldn't want their L2 backed up by this like super secure, the most decentralized network? Like everybody knows Bitcoin, everybody trusts Bitcoin. So I think, there's going to be L2s on Ethereum. There's going to be L2s on Bitcoin. I don't think it makes sense to build L2s anywhere else. And I think the last 6 years have been pretty much dominated by people, creating these L1 ecosystems. I think the next couple of years are going to be dominated by people creating L2 ecosystems on Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Now, Jake, aren't you, sourcing to invest in some L2s?
I mean, we invest everywhere for sure, as long as it's on Bitcoin. So that's the caveat. But yeah, I mean, at the fund, we invest across the Bitcoin ecosystem. We started as Stacks Ventures, so we had a thesis on the Stacks L2 sidechain, depending how you want to cut it. Some people get wordy about definitions here, but no, we invest across everything: Stacks, Rootstock, Lightning, Ordinals, DLCs. I'm looking at RGB right now, which I think is a finally up and coming off-chain solution that's has a pretty good wallet solution out now. So yeah, I mean, if anybody listening, if you're building some cool shit anywhere across Bitcoin, and you're kind of in that early-ish stage, hit us up. Like we love to potentially invest, but even just give you some harsh feedback, and I can roast you for a half hour, and give you some good feedback. I see a lot of things, so I have a decent perspective, bird's eye view of seeing so many startups come in week after week after week. So maybe I can give you some perspective on something that you might have missed. But yeah.
Yeah, flood his DMs, people, if you're watching right now. Also, Trevor is going to be at Bitcoin Amsterdam very soon.
Yeah, that's this week, right now.
Yeah, this week.
Yeah.
Other members of BFF that we're trying to get on the show are also going to be at events coming up, like Andrea and
Kevin.
I think somebody else, but yeah. So
I got a question on L2s for you guys, because I didn't follow Ethereum at all, so I didn't watch the progression of Polygon and everything. It seems to me that L2s only popped when Ethereum was like stupid expensive for a period of time, but months on end. So if that's true, it seems like Bitcoin L2s won't pop until L1 is in that same place, and it was for a while, and now it's cooled off. So it seems like until we get a bunch of pressure of fees from payments and fees from other adjacent use cases like Ordinals and whatever, all these other L2s, Lightning, Stacks, Rootstock, won't pop. So from what you've seen with ETH, is that generally how it played out? And like, you think it's going to play out the same in Bitcoin?
Well, Bitcoin kind of worked in the reverse direction, because it's exactly what you said about Ethereum. Ethereum, the L1 got stupid expensive to do anything, and that's when L2 really popped with Polygon, and different game makers started doing games on Polygon. Big studios are making games for Polygon. Well, with Bitcoin though, from what I could tell, it seems like L2 came first. Like the usability of L2 came first on Bitcoin because nobody was doing anything on L1 Bitcoin until Ordinals, and I don't know if it's gonna actually catch up the same way because there's people on what stacks is L2 on their Alex, right? That's L2 on Bitcoin. So these have been around for a little while. So it's a different dynamic when it comes to Bitcoin. It's like it's going the opposite direction. I don't know how the sats and the fees are right now. You say it's going up right now, or it's just
Well,
mimicking.
I'm not sure what the pool is right now, but it's been down. It's getting compared to where it was a few months ago. It's way cooler. I think the thing I'm wondering though is like the Bitcoin L2s tried to bring smart contracts to Bitcoin, and they tried to mimic things they saw on ETH. And there's no Bitcoin L2 that has reasonable traction, like none of them. So even Lightning, like Lightning is the closest, and even then, it's like still kind of fighting for being relevant, although it's getting better. But the other three, like Stacks, Liquid, Rootstock, have no meaningful traction, especially compared to ETH. So I think they over optimized too early, is what it seems like. They built the highway, and now no one's using the highway. And it seems to me that until Bitcoin L1 is congested with like that LA style traffic, no one's going to go to the other ones. So I don't know. That's my pulse.
I think just the Bitcoin L2s, I have like multiple layers to this answer. Like I think it just required extra like knowledge. And that's kind of where we got last week and where we're at this week too, is like there's very technical people that are very smart, but they're not very good at breaking it down for non-technical people. So like even if you're building really cool stuff on these L2s, if the L2s aren't like super user friendly, then I just don't know how many people right now are going to use them, maybe eventually. And I know as far as like from me being a consumer perspective, I didn't even really start using L2s until like later in the game. I used ETH primarily, and then yeah, things just got expensive. And then once I actually started using the chains, like I started playing games on chain, I started trading a lot more, I started like doing other stuff. It's like, yeah, I don't want to, even when ETH gas fees were like 20 to 50 bucks, I don't want to pay that every single time I do something. So I started using Immutable X, I started using Polygon, started using like, other L2s to like do things. And I think that goes into my second answer. Again, I know they're all over the place. I just don't see them that much, but like I don't see how much people are using Bitcoin outside of really until the ordinal craze happens. And then outside of like very like structured systems that like are going to benefit people. But like I don't see a lot of like microtransactions that like the average consumer is going to go over there for. And then also there's obviously the degen culture, which I do think got into ordinals a little bit, to where they're all trading and trying to find profit plays and flip things. So they're using the chain to try to make money. So like if there's not liquidity as far as like trading goes, money to be made, and there's not like maybe not things immediately to do for the average consumer, then maybe right now there's not a huge reason for a bunch of people to go over. But I definitely think, seeing people build really cool stuff right now, I do think there's going to be a lot of interactive stuff to use in the future. And I think once transaction fees get higher, people are going to naturally go to L2s. Like I've used like the only one you just named that I've like actually used is Stacks. And that was, I got introduced to it. It wasn't like it was a hard learning curve, but it was one of those, like, it took me a little bit to like, get into it and download the necessary wallet that I needed to download and all that.
What else you did on Stacks, bro?
What do you mean?
What else you did? You used Stacks to do what?
Yeah, I bought a Crash Punk, and then like I like got the what? What you guys quizzing me for? Like the show's not about me. It's about
first.
About
I feel like he's seducing an answer out of you, but then it's also like Crash Punks is one of Tio's things. So it's like I was like, oh, is this like a very subtle way to like chill? Because that was smooth.
No. Yeah. So I was just saying, like, ultimately to answer your question, I think for the average like consumer that are like doing like a lot of activity, I just, maybe I'm not really seeing everything that's going on. I'm not saying there's nothing going on, obviously, but
there's nothing going on. Just so you know. Wait, can I do a quick poll? Who here has used Lightning?
Payment?
I've used it.
Yeah, I have.
Leo, okay.
Like Bitcoin 101.
Okay.
Nada.
we're still early. Ken 100% has not used Lightning, so
Wow.
I've used a
I'm
lot of
blown
ETH
away.
stuff though, so there's that.
that's good, I guess.
No,
Uh,
now I would say to that argument that says when the prices go up, people are going to move to L2s. With Ethereum, the traders don't care how high the prices go as long as we profit. Now, when it
mhm.
comes to gaming and activities and doing things, then L2s are more. I'm not sure. Would you be able to build a whole gaming infrastructure on Bitcoin L2? Is that something
Yeah,
possible right now?
for sure.
Oh,
Yeah, you
oh
could.
okay.
You could.
Well, then do it.
But I think that's
Two.
interesting though. Is that I think that's interesting because I think even if you look at TVL, I think the L2 TVL is like 10% of that on ETH, something like that. I might be having my percentages wrong, but like even though it's expensive to transact, most of the important stuff is still on the L1. So that's probably going to map to Bitcoin as well, if I had to guess. People are just going to find more clever ways to do it.
You know, Lightning's 142 million right now for TVL. That's honestly not, yeah, that's not good. Like that's Bitcoin has a lot of catching up to do, I think, in the L2 space, right? Like that is not even, you wouldn't even be like one of
Yeah,
the top
although
it was on
although
Ethereum.
although to caveat with Lightning is interesting because River is one of the biggest Lightning channels, and they've been dropping their capacity because channel efficiency, like routing, is getting more efficient. So it's not the best proxy for usage, like transaction volume is, but because it's somewhat private, it's hard to get that number. But yeah, that number's been going somewhat down because the way that nodes are talking to each other is getting more and more efficient, is my understanding.
Interesting. Interesting.
Okay, so let's be real. How much inspiration does Ethereum give to all you guys in Bitcoin? Let's give some credit to Ethereum for a second, because every time I look on my timeline, one of you guys are shitting on Ethereum every single day, man. Why is this, man? Because they're basically Ordinals and Bitcoin is copying everything Ethereum does, but yet the users constantly shit on Ethereum. Why?
ETH
Can
is,
you?
yeah, go ahead, Jake.
I just don't know what Ethereum is. Can you explain?
Ethereum is
Go ahead.
daddy. That's what they call him.
Well, I'm out of here. I'll see y'all later. I'm peace. No, Leo, you can go ahead and answer. I have no answer for this question.
I think Ethereum Ethereum took a bunch of ideas that were happening on Bitcoin already, and that due to the culture on Bitcoin in these earlier days, like 2014, 2015, you know, chose to not do these things on these experiments on Bitcoin, chose to do them elsewhere, which, you know, probably made sense at the time. And ultimately Vitalik gets like massive credit for, you know, taking those ideas, doing them, you know, on their own chain where there's going to be a culture that allows people to, you know, do those experiments and be respected, and, you know, developers can kind of have fun trying to make like fun dapps and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And it turns out a few of those use cases worked really well. So that strategy of the Silicon Valley approach to building, of trying 1,000 things and, you know, one or two of them like DeFi or NFTs takes off, that strategy clearly worked, right? Like Bitcoin just burying their head in the sand, saying, you know, currency forever, you're going to ultimately lose out to a network that allows currency plus a bunch of other things probably. So Ethereum gets credit for, like, I think the culture of respecting and celebrating developers having the ability to experiment and try cool things. Like that culture made Ethereum like super successful, whereas Bitcoin didn't have it. So I don't even think it's like technically like Bitcoin could make a small upgrade today to allow a lot more functionality on Bitcoin. And like just the culture is to not make changes. And there's pros and cons to that. But to Vitalik's credit, like I think the culture on Ethereum is really awesome. It's a great place to be if you're a developer. And I think Bitcoin should definitely learn from that and borrow some of that, because it's time for Bitcoin to, you know, I think if you're still a Bitcoiner who thinks everything on Ethereum is a scam or there's nothing valuable there, you've just been lying to yourself like way too long at this point. Like clearly that's not the case anymore. And I think you have to acknowledge that. And, you know, let's learn from what they did over on Ethereum. Let's see what they did right. Let's see what they did wrong. and then let's try to do these similar things on Bitcoin, but apply Bitcoin's values to those things, right? So we don't just copy paste NFTs over here. We have our own culture, our own primitive that we use, our inscriptions.
Yeah, I would
right, guys.
to sum it up in one sentence, Ethereum is a Bitcoin testnet.
Oh,
I don't know what just happened.
He's swinging.
That
huh?
was
okay.
yeah, that was one way to put it, Jake. That was definitely a way to put it. So we're at the closing of the space. I do have a hard out today. But before we conclude, I got to ask both of you one question, and then we'll conclude it. Also, shout out to everybody that was listening on X. X did us dirty, and I just noticed they've been doing this to everybody all day. They didn't broadcast the space. They made it that weird little half link that, like, when you're in the crypto space, you don't even want to click that because you don't know if you're going to get your wallet drained. You don't know if somebody got their SIM swapped or whatever. So you don't want to touch that. So they did us dirty. But I got to ask you, was Jim Cramer correct today when he said that Bitcoin's done and it's going down?
100%.
I mean, I think he's talking like short-term speculation, and like I honestly have no idea. Like I've been in this space long enough to stop pretending that I know what's going on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Because there's a lot of people that act like they know what's going on.
The longer I spend here, the less I check the price. So I don't even know. I do like the inverse Kramer signal, so that's a bullish sign for Bitcoin for sure. But yeah, I haven't checked the price much. Leo, you're a builder. Do you check the price often, or?
I'm gonna be honest. I've been addicted to checking the price for a decade. So yes, yeah, but I do think like it's important to understand because it actually affects the psychology in the space and has a bunch of different ramifications. But at the end of the day, like we either have another massive bull run or we don't, and I think everyone here believes that we do. And everything that happens between now and then, it's probably like it's very important that we do a lot of work, but if you're focusing on prices between now and then, you're really missing the big opportunity, which is the next bull run, where if you've been through this before, basically everyone gets rich. So that would be the strategy. Like wait for the next bull run, like macroeconomic news and just random little things happening in the space like isn't that interesting unless you're a really good trader.
Okay.
Well said, Leo. Well said. And I think everybody here is building to some capacity, except for maybe Ken. I think he's still,
I do
trading
have
some JPEGs.
One last question, though, not to make it real serious. How do you both feel about the Israel war right now?
I'm joking.
Don't answer that.
Don't answer that.
Don't answer that. Don't answer that. Chris, you're good to go.
Thanks so Thank you so much, Leo and Jake, of course, for joining Bitcoin Banter. It's called Bitcoin Banter because we banter. We kick the shit. We have fun. Making Bitcoin great again. Is that our slogan, Ken? Is that what we agreed on?
I'm not in any room where you're deciding all these things, Chris. What's going on?
Jake, Leo, you guys are always welcome to come back on the show if you want to after this episode. And we're going to do it every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 Eastern time. And yeah, we'll be live. Hopefully next time the broadcast doesn't mess up. But either way, thank you everybody for tuning in on X. Leo, Jake, thanks again. Do you guys have any final words before we conclude?
Any plugs?
Leo, go ahead.
I mean, thanks for having us. Like, this was cool. I like the format. I'm hoping Twitter kind of continues to, let us do like cool stuff like this. Cause I don't know, I'm enjoying Elon's version of Twitter where we just like release cool features every day. So I'm pumped to see, hopefully there's a team that's going to keep iterating on this format and we can come back in a couple of months and it's even better.
I agree. 100%.
Yeah, I love the show. It's something I've been thinking about recently is that there's too much damn serious shows. We're talking about economic theory and like Bitcoin is serious and money and like the impending recession and, start growing your own crops. It's about to get bad and all this stuff. And it's like the closest thing we have is the Ordinals show where it's just like vibes and NFT now. But we need this for a Bitcoin focus. And you guys do a pretty good job with the Ordinals show where you guys do branch out at times. But
honestly, the feedback we get on the Ordinals show from like degens from like Solana is that like we're way too serious and technical. Like they want to talk about like the hottest collection on Magic Eden, and like we're not talking about that. So I don't know. Like I enjoyed the show. You guys this is a cool show, cool group. So I'm excited to hopefully tune in some future episodes.
We had one of the senior engineers on from the Magic Eden Bitcoin last week. That was a really good guess as well.
Cool.
I told him told him my thoughts on Solana.
Yeah, that was
great.
funny. We should clip that up, Chris.
Told him I thought Solana was full of rugs and scams and didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But that was last week. This week we're talking about Bitcoin and how it's trying to catch up with Ethereum. So who knows what we'll talk about next week.
And don't forget, you associated Magic Eden with those scams and rugs.
No.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. That was the funniest part, Chris. And it's almost like you didn't notice that's what you were saying. And the guy was right here.
Jake, Leah, thanks so much for your time. Everybody tune in Thursday, same time, 6:30 Eastern time.